make a request to any service in ArcGIS server, whether it's a feature service, the query REST endpoint, or error REST endpoint, you get back a response, and that response has certain size. That size is controlled by the heap maximum size, right? So if you like query certain feature service or a table or layer, then you returned, for example, a result, there is a limit after which the ArcGIS server will start complaining. And that's our discussion for today coming up. What's up, y'all? This is Hussein Nasser from iGeometry podcast, and welcome to another ArcGIS server talk. Today's topic is the maximum heap size in ArcGIS server. So this is a very interesting configuration that you can do on your ArcGIS server machines, right? Because it's a per machine thing. So just like I did in the intro, so if you make a request to an ArcGIS server service, right, go through the web adapter if you have any, right? Doesn't have to. From the web adapter, just round robin into the web adapters, the internal web adapters of the machine on port 6443 or 6080. Then just jumps onto the machine itself. You make the request, whatever that request is. Could be an apply edit, could be a query, could be a sync, anything, right? That start doing some stuff, computation at the server, could be talking to the database at the backend, and then compiles a list of results. And then after compiling all this result, it just change it to the desired response format. Typically this is JSON, but could be HTML or other stuff. So that then returns essentially a string through the HTTP protocol back to the user. So during that, I'm going to discuss this part, essentially, this conversion into the response. The machine, right? That ArcGIS server machine can control that, the response size. And there is a default response size set as 64 megabytes response. So that is pretty big, right? And there are some cases where this response size has been exceeded. So like it depends on your use case. Like you know your analytic or your SOE doesn't have to be an out-of-the-box REST endpoint. Could be anything really, right? Then you know that this could exceed that 64 megabyte size. So what you need to do is increase that from the ArcGIS server manager admin as such. Actually, you cannot do it from the manager. If your response exceeded that maximum heap size, it's called the maximum heap size, you will get an error essentially executing a request. And Esri does that for a very good reason, right? You want to limit how that result, because the bigger the response that the ArcGIS server machine tries to process and compile in order to return through the wire, the longer it's going to take. That obviously occupies the SOC doing things that is very trivial, that that could be fixed, but that SOC can be used to fulfill other requests that are more important, right? So make sure if you have a use case where you need to increase that, and like say, hey, I'm running a special analytic or SOE, server object extension, and that result will return a big thing. I know what I'm doing, right? I know what I'm doing, so let me increase that heap size and get me all the results. It could be 128 or 500 megs. Pretty bad idea, but you can do it. You can change that heap size to increase it. So it's like if you return that result, ArcGIS server says, okay, as long as you didn't increase the heap size, we're good. So it's like the smaller that heap size, the better your request will be handled. That's just like essentially a very good practice to make your responses quicker, right? If you think your request can be broken into multiple smaller requests that have smaller responses, it is generally a good idea to do that, right? Let the client pay the price of having to do multiple requests instead of doing one big request that returns a huge response. All right, so it's all about trade-off, guys. It's all about trade-off. So what else did I want to talk about? Yeah, right. So there are two properties here if you think about it. There's wearing a jacket, guys, was a very bad idea in this weather. I don't understand California's weather, seriously. It's so hot. I wake up in the morning and the temperature is 40. I drive to work and it's what? 81. Jeez. Sorry about that, guys. You're gonna listen to that whole thing. I can't cut this thing. You're gonna suffer with me. All right, so yeah, so there are two properties. Took my jacket off. So there are two properties here that is very interesting, actually. The first one is the web server heap size. You'd see that in the admin, right? The second one is the ArcGIS server SOC. I think it's called SOC heap size, server object container heap size. And there's a difference between the two. By default, I think the web server heap size is set to -1, which is the maximum, right? It's like, I think -1 is unlimited. However, the SOC size is what we're talking about, the actual machine doing the SOC being busy doing that compiling or building that response size, essentially. You can, if you want, change that web server. If you want to be more restrictive, you can change the web server heap size to give it a value. So, but even if the ArcGIS server passes that result, you will be caught by the web server, essentially. So the web server, that's the mini Tomcat Apache web server that is running on top of the ArcGIS server, and you can catch it there as well. And so, because sometimes you can configure the web adapter, not the web adapter, the actual web server, to have that configuration, to block it in 2 levels, essentially. Right. Finally, I'd like to talk about where can you set this option. So remember, guys, when we talked about the server sites, a site is a logical class container, and you can put multiple machines in, and then join to the site. You can join one machine or more, and the configuration we talked about, which is the SOC heap, maximum SOC heap size, is configured on the machine level. It's not on the site level. So you can, I don't know why, but you can theoretically set one machine to have a higher SOC size than the other ones. You can do that, right? So the idea, if you have like multiple clusters, this is definitely the case as well. You can have like a cluster having multiple machines in it, another cluster having multiple machines in it. So these cluster machines are running services that essentially are very heavy services. So like a request to these services return higher payload. So you might want to increase that. All right, guys, I think that is all for me today. Hope you enjoyed this episode of ArcGIS Server Talk. Subscribe to this podcast if you enjoy this stuff. Go to my website, husseinnasser.com, and check out all the content that I put out there. I have multiple books on ArcGIS technology. I have this podcast. I have a YouTube channel where I discuss GIS and software engineering, not only GIS. So consider subscribing to all that stuff. Tweet me or email me if you have any questions. I love to hear from you guys, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Do suggest a topic. I really love you guys when you suggest some topics. Most of the topics I discuss here are topics suggested by you. So stay awesome. I'm gonna see you in the next one. So I forgot to mention a very important thing. What's the use of this parameter? Right. And the cool thing about this podcast application is that I can edit my podcast after I publish them. Mind blown. All right, guys. So maximum heap size. So you would want, right? So essentially, if the normal use cases, if you are making requests to the REST endpoints, you want these requests to be very tiny. That is not the request, the responses. You want them to be tiny, and you can be vigilant if you want to. You can enforce very regimented and restrictive configuration if you want to. Again, very dangerous, could break your workflows, but it will be good essentially, because you can lower that. If you think about it, you can lower that maximum heap size, right, to a lower number. Let's say I don't want anybody to request something that results in a response that's larger than 1 megabyte. If they do, essentially the moment you do that, save your configuration. You can just do some A/B testing. You can do it on one machine, and you can like flood the application through this machine and try that for a while. And you'll start seeing some people screaming because, hey, my application essentially doesn't work, or something like that, right? So again, do this on your own terms, right? Disclaimer here. But if you do that, I would suggest like you do this in a testing environment first and see. You'll essentially see a lot of applications will start to break, and those applications you can go back to them and see what they are doing. They will break because they are requesting a large amount of payload. Again, this could be very legitimate use case, but you can rewrite this application so they request a smaller payload instead of a huge payload. So you can code things like let's say people are doing a query request that returns all fields, and they're only using 1 or 2. So not only that's a typical select star rookie mistake, right? A lot of people do that, developers do that. So when you do that, not only you're overloading the database and making it go and fetch all these unnecessary fields that you're not even going to use, then you're going to go through the trouble and serializing everything to JSON, then return all that stuff, right? And thus increase the payload size, the response size. So you can start detecting these cases just for fun. Try it. See what happens. Again, disclaimer. Right, guys, that's one thing you can do, and you can start popping up all these cases, right? Again, some applications, if you think about it, some application absolutely have to make one request, and that will have to return huge response size. You can't really control that, right? There's no workaround around it, but most of the cases you can break up and chunk up your request into smaller requests that first execute really quickly, and they will also be serialized more quickly, and your network will not be saturated with unnecessary stuff, essentially, right? So play with this parameter. Let me know what you think. All right, guys, that's all for me. I'll see you in the next one. You guys stay awesome.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.